Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Deuteronomy chapter 13 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to break this down into 6 parts. First, the context and the chapter hook, then the false prophet, the enticing relative, the corrupted city, some key ideas and explanations, and finally, we'll wrap up with practical lessons and a quick recap.
Okay, part 1, context and our chapter hook. Let's talk about the ultimate threat of idolatry.
So we're diving straight into the plain, simple meaning of the text here, the Peshat. We aren't jumping around, we're just unpacking exactly what is happening in this specific chapter. And honestly, this entire chapter is just laser-focused on one massive threat, idolatry, meaning the worship of other gods. It asks a huge question. How does a society built on a strict covenant react when that core loyalty is threatened? Now, the text doesn't just throw a generic rule at us. Instead, it brilliantly presents 3 escalating scenarios of temptation. It's the rule of 3. We move from a public threat down to a deeply private and emotional threat, and then finally zoom out to a massive communal threat. It really covers every single level of society.
Moving on to section 2, the false prophet, which represents our first scenario, a very public threat.
Let's crack open verses 1 through 5. Imagine this. A public figure, maybe a Navi, which is a prophet, or a dreamer of dreams, stands up and announces a sign or a wonder. And here is the truly shocking part of the text. The sign actually comes true. We're not talking about a cheap magic trick here. It's a real, undeniable miracle. So what do you do when your own eyes tell you one thing, but your covenant tells you another?
Well, the text is absolutely uncompromising here. It commands that even if that miracle is 100% real, if that prophet then turns around and says, hey, let us follow other gods, specifically gods you haven't known, you have to completely reject them. You are literally forbidden to listen. But that kind of makes you wonder, right? Why would God allow a real miracle to be performed by a false prophet in the first place?
The answer is actually given to us super plainly in the text. It's a nision, a divine test. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you truly love him with all your heart and with all your soul. So that miracle, it's not proof that these other gods are real. Not at all. It's an examination of your core loyalty. It's forcing you to hold fast to the truth, regardless of the flashy illusions or miracles you might see right in front of you. And because they preached rebellion against the God who brought you out of Egypt, the consequence laid out in the text is absolute. That prophet must be put to death. The text actually uses this really powerful Hebrew phrase here, ubi'arta hara mikirbecha, which means you must purge the evil from your midst. The deception just has to be entirely removed to protect the community. All right, section 3, the enticing relative. We are shifting now to a much more private threat. Now we're moving into verses 6 through 11. And man, this is an even harder scenario. We're stepping out of the public square and right into your living room. How do you react if a loved one secretly entices you? In Hebrew, this kind of person is called a mesit, an instigator or an enticer. Imagine they come to you privately, quietly, and whisper, "Let us go and worship other gods." The text actually gets very specific here. It lists your very own brother, your son or daughter, the wife you embrace, or your absolute closest friend. By listing these super intimate bonds, the text brilliantly illustrates that the temptation is no longer just some intellectual debate. It is deeply, deeply emotional. The pressure to just go along with a beloved family member or your best friend is immense, right? Yet despite that emotional pull, the text demands a stance of absolute zero tolerance. Just listen to this relentless sequence of commands. Do not yield to him. Do not listen to him. Show him no pity. Do not spare him, and do not shield him. You can't just cover up for them because you love them. Your fundamental loyalty to the truth has to override those emotional attachments. And the consequence here is devastating. The enticer must be stoned to death. But there's a really chilling detail added. Your hand must be the first one raised against them, followed by the rest of the people. This is a profound, incredibly difficult physical demonstration that you are fully rejecting that private familial bond in favor of the covenant. It's designed to serve as the ultimate deterrent so that all Israel will hear about it, be afraid, and never commit such an evil thing again. That brings us to section 4, the corrupted city. This is the communal threat. Finally, the text escalates to the ultimate communal crisis in verses 12 through 18.
Picture this. You hear a rumor that an entire town has been led astray. The text says that wicked men, the Hebrew word used is Belial, which basically means worthless or base fellows, have infected the core of their very own city with idolatry.
Now, when a terrifying rumor like this spreads, that a whole entire city has turned to worship other gods, human nature might demand a really hasty, panicked reaction. Grab the pitchforks. But the text absolutely forbids mob justice. The response to a corrupted city must be incredibly careful and methodical.
Notice the rigorous legal process the text actually demands here. It uses 3 very specific commands. You must inquire, derisha, probe, chakira, and investigate thoroughly. So devastating action is never, ever taken on mere hearsay. Before any judgment falls on a city, the evidence has to be completely airtight that this detestable thing has actually occurred.
If that thorough investigation proves the rumor is true, the city becomes an Ir Niberdat, a completely subverted city. The consequence is total quarantine. The inhabitants are put to the sword, and the city, along with all its livestock and all its plunder, has to be gathered in the public square and completely burned. It is literally treated as a whole burnt offering to God, a complete destruction that must be left as a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt.
All right, moving to section 5, key ideas and explanations. Let's synthesize what we've unpacked here. Looking at the plain meaning of these 3 scenarios we just went through, we can clearly see a systematic defense against idolatry at every single level of society. Whether the threat is a public false prophet, a private enticer in your own home, or a group of communal wicked men, the response is entirely uncompromising. The core identity of the people simply cannot be fractured, no matter where the temptation originates. And it's really vital to clarify a specific concept found at the very end of the chapter regarding that corrupted city. The text explicitly says none of the condemned things, the Hebrew word for this is cherem, shall be found in your hands. This means that destruction is purely an act of justice. Absolutely no one is allowed to take the plunder for their own personal enrichment. You simply cannot financially benefit from rooting out corruption. It has to be completely selfless. Which leads us nicely into section 6, practical lessons and our recap. Let's talk takeaways.
Obviously, we live in a very different time today, but the underlying principles of human behavior here are still profound. So what can we learn? First, true loyalty to your core values matters way more than flashy illusions or passing cultural trends. Second, we have to be aware of peer pressure from those we love the most. Sometimes our closest ties can tempt us to compromise our principles. Third, we should always demand rigorous truth-seeking and investigation before believing massive accusations. And finally, never profit from a tragedy or from the corruption of others.
This chapter really challenges us on a deep level. It ultimately asks, will you stand firm in your core values when the pressure to compromise comes from those closest to you, or will you yield? Think about that. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.